Mummy, why do you sound so lifeless? Can you hear me? Are you there? Gayle's soft voice from the cell phone echoed with concern in her mother's ear. Yes, sorry, daughter. You know how I can easily fall out of the conversation after work. Samantha tried to infuse her voice with a semblance of lighthearted calmness. So, Tom, Naomi and I are visiting you on Christmas. Or do you have any other plans? Let me know immediately so I can quickly adjust our plans. Honey, frankly speaking, I'm not sure about your dad's plans. Samantha exhaled. I can only assume they're wonderful. It's a shame to say, but he left me for a younger, beautiful woman. They've been seeing each other for a while now, so we're going to divorce officially. I'm sorry to drop such news on Christmas. You know I've never been good at keeping things from you. Mummy, I'm coming to see you. As soon as Tom gets home from work to watch Naomi, I'll grab a cab and be there right away. Gayle, I'm fine. You don't need to disrupt a 2-year-old's schedule because of me. It won't make me feel any better. Mum, that kid has a dad, a perfectly adequate, responsible modern father. You can fool anyone with your calm voice, but not me. I'll be an hour and a half. Samantha listened to 3 quick beeps in the receiver and smiled sadly. She considered herself fortunate to have the daughter like Gayle. Not everyone is so lucky. Samantha learned about the challenges of adolescence from other people's stories. She also managed to avoid the drama of Gayle's first love. In fact, there was no drama at all. Gayle took her studies seriously, found a job in her second year, and managed to balance both. By the end of her time at the college, she had saved up for a vacation to Italy, with a little help from her parents. On the plane, Gayle met her future husband, Tom. They spent a week in Venice, Florence and Rome. 6 months after returning home, they got married and welcomed their first daughter, Naomi. Samantha found joy in her role as a devoted grandmother, feeling almost perfectly content. She and her husband Mark led a perfectly typical life for a long-time couple. They didn't quarrel or dispute fundamental issues. They lived in peace. Mark was a good earner and managed money wisely. Until yesterday noon, Samantha was thinking her marital life was quite well. She invested her whole heart and effort into her family, not viewing it as a sacrifice. It was her joy to care for her husband and maintain a cosy home, a sanctuary they both looked forward to returning to after work. Their apartment might not be larger or more comfortable than those of their friends, but everyone loved to gather there during the holidays. Samantha always had everything so well arranged. Mark's friends often showed joking envy, and he seriously took Samantha's care of himself as a due. For the past few years, Mark had been working on building a country house, dedicating all his spare time to it. Samantha didn't have an opportunity to visit the construction site every week, which initially caused her great concern. However, Mark reassured her, saying, "Samantha, relax. No one can do everything at once. You just want to be everywhere. It would be better if you managed things here, and I took care of things there." Samantha understood, or at least she thought she did. He truly needed something of his own, where he was alone, was the boss. So she stepped back, relinquishing control of the estate affairs to her husband. And yesterday morning she suddenly fell ill at work. She experienced weakness and a headache so severe that her usual medication didn't help. She must have looked quite unwell, because even her boss, who was often described as indifferent, looked at her and said, "Samantha, sometimes it's better to take a couple of days off than to be sick for 2 weeks. Go home and rest. Come back to work the day after tomorrow. It won't affect your paycheck. I don't need exhausted employees. I'm not as indifferent as some people claim." Samantha nodded gratefully and headed home. It's fascinating how we sometimes misjudge people, especially our bosses. Quietly, Samantha entered the apartment, trying not to make noise. Mark had arrived late from a business trip and she didn't want to disturb his sleep. However, Mark wasn't sleeping. From the living room she could hear a conversation. Judging by the lack of another voice, Mark was on the phone, but his voice and intonation were uncharacteristically different. "My sweet sunshine, I'm coming over today. My wife is pickling tomatoes after work today with a new recipe. There are new recipes every year, but the wife is getting older. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to joke around. Yes, I'm going to tell her the truth soon. I appreciate your understanding, I really do. I'm glad you don't want to spend Christmas without me. I'll make a decision soon, I promise. My dear girl, don't be naive. Try to understand my situation. It's not easy for me. I'm not devoid of emotions. It's a marriage of more than 25 years and a daughter raised. I feel sorry for Samantha. She's becoming old, wrapped up in just 5 years. She'll look really old. But she's dedicated to the family. Her pantry is full of things she has made. She always aims for perfection. If I leave, she'll be alone. Well, she'll still have our daughter and son-in-law. No, it's not that I'm uncomfortable. I don't care about her cooking and nice curtains in the house. I don't want to spend the rest of my life fishing on the lake just to escape from my wife. I need joy in my life. And you are my joy. Samantha looked at herself in the mirror and saw an aged, grey, tired woman. She couldn't compete with anyone. If it weren't for her throbbing headache, she would have run outside, aimlessly wandering until evening, or until she regained control and her ability to think clearly. But she didn't even have the energy to descend the stairs. She attempted to close the door quietly. However, her husband heard the sound. He said goodbye to his conversationalist and stepped into the hallway. "I've decided not to do the tomato pickling, if you don't care," Samantha managed to say, mustering her remaining strength. "Samantha, perhaps it's better that you heard everything. I hate lying to you. I should have ended it long before. You're a good person, and I'm sorry, but there's no point in continuing this," he replied. "Yeah," Samantha responded indifferently. "It's good that you at last recognize your old wife as a human being." "Samantha, what's the point of this bitterness? Let's be honest, I'm only 53, and I still crave love. Why should I give that up? Gayle is already an adult and has her own family, and now we have almost nothing to connect us. You're just refusing to accept it, clinging to this empty shell of a marriage. Look after our granddaughter. Now you have someone to care for. I could have lived like that. Like most people my age, but I got lucky. A beautiful young woman fell in love with me, and I deeply love her. Not everyone is so fortunate. This is my new life, a genuine life. One can't turn that down. It's a gift. Thanks to her, I now realize how unhappy I was. This is my chance to start fresh. You won't lose out. You're the mother of my daughter. I'll leave you this apartment. I won't take anything from here, except for my clothes and shoes. I'll live in the house with her. It's fair. I had put my money and effort into it. As for our car, you don't drive and you didn't invest in it, so it's logical that I keep it to myself. I'll provide you with some initial funds. We'll discuss the amount." "What if I ask for a lot?" Samantha asked. "We'll discuss it," Mark patiently repeated. "Wow, so deeply in love yet so rational. You've thought all this out for a while, haven't you? Only resolve was lacking, but everything else was well planned. What a strategist you are. Samantha, can we handle this amicably, please?" In case you haven't noticed, I'm not barking at you like a dog. I don't need to have this conversation at all. I came home because I have a headache. I'm going to take a warm bath. It helps. While I'm taking my bath, gather your belongings and papers. Don't leave anything behind. And leave your keys. You can file for divorce yourself. I would like you not to drag it out. I'll show up on the appointed day and hour, and we'll get divorced. I don't need your money. My salary is enough for me. Just don't show up after that. So that the day of the divorce is the last time I see you. And if you want, you can give your share of the apartment to Gayle, so that your love won't disinherit the girl. It's really fair, don't you think? Mum, how could you think of my inheritance at this moment? Gayle was quietly amazed when her mother finally told her what had happened. And who should I be thinking about, daughter? Samantha shrugged her shoulders, and a shadow of a sad grin crossed her pale face. When such a thing happens, it's necessary to hold on to something that will maintain interest in life. I am happy. I have you and my lovely son-in-law Tom, and I also have my cute granddaughter Naomi. I promise not to burden you excessively with my care, and not to turn into an annoying old grandmother, which your father thinks I am. I've reflected a bit, and his words make sense. I've always tried to ensure that he was well fed, dressed in clean clothes, rested peacefully, and surrounded by comfort. It was like domestic service. It seemed like the right thing to do for the family. I didn't realize he needed anything else. I should have thought more about myself, tried to be charming, and things might have turned out differently, although it's pointless to speculate about it now. You're making excuses for him, then? Asked Gayle. Honestly, Mum, you surprise me with this tendency to always blame yourself for everything. It's too much. I didn't tell you before, but I will now. I had a conversation with Dad about 3 years ago when he gifted you a blender on your birthday. It's a good blender. It still works. Samantha nodded. Mum, it's not a gift. It's just something you buy when you need it for no reason. Back then, I suddenly remembered that for every holiday, Dad would give you some practical and useful household item. When I told him about it, he seemed surprised, as if it were the first time he had heard that gifts could be perfume, jewellery, theatre tickets, or a spa visit. Something to show he sees you as a woman and wants to make you happy. But he didn't listen to me, even got angry, saying I was still naive and trying to tell him how to treat his wife. I didn't think much of it at the time, and now it's come back to me. Mum, you were convenient for him. You were content with a blender or multi-cooker and didn't spend much on self-care. He didn't want a beautiful, well-groomed wife. He wanted a convenient one. I hope his new girlfriend will have spent all his earnings on her beauty. Gayle, you've even cheered me up. Samantha smiled with a hint of confusion. I didn't realize I'd raised you to be so vindictive. Mum, I just love you very much. I feel sorry for you. And you certainly don't deserve such a thing. All Tom's friends are jealous that he has such a mother-in-law. They joke that he married me because of you. Father is just used to deluxe care. Took it for granted all his life. He'll be sorry, you'll see. I don't want him to regret anything. Let him go in peace. Thank you, Gayle, but please don't argue with Daddy. You're an adult, you're diplomatic, and he's still your father. Our divorce is our business. It has nothing to do with you. Besides, he promised to take care of your inheritance. Don't worry, Mummy. I won't give up my half of the kingdom. Gayle reassured her mum with a smile. If only to prevent some toothy, predatory shark from getting it. I admire your self-control. I never realized that you are so strong. Suddenly, tears sprang from Samantha's eyes as if breaking through an invisible dam. Gayle, daughter, don't understand myself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg him, don't leave me. Let's try to make things right. I'll forgive everything. I'll take everything into account. I just want you to stay. But I held back. I couldn't cry in front of him. You're the one I trust, and I'm crying in front of you, and I'm not ashamed. Gayle got up from her chair, went over and hugged her mother, stroking her head, while Samantha sobbed and started to feel better. Oh, Gayle, there is some good news, after all, she said a few minutes later. I've fallen out of love with him. When I exited the bathroom, He had already left. The apartment was as clean as ever. I automatically walked into the closet, needing something to occupy my hands. The shelves were still neatly organized, with gaps where his underwear used to be. Everything was in its place. His shirts and jackets were gone, along with their hangers, so they won't wrinkle in their new home. The drawer where he kept his documents was also neat. There was no mess, as there might have been if he had left rushing or while emotional. He was meticulously preparing for his new life. Suddenly I found the whole situation amusing and repulsive, and I fell out of love with him. Just like that. In an instant, really. Mum, I sincerely hope that's how you feel, in fact. It's a blessing if it's true. You won't waste your time suffering needlessly. Instead, you'll live your life, reconnect with old friends, go to the theatre. You'll finally take care of yourself. We can style your hair, dye it, update your wardrobe. We can even send you on a vacation to celebrate your divorce. That sounds good, doesn't it? Starting a new life, as Gayle suspected, was only easy in theory. In practice, it was slow and laborious. Samantha suddenly had a lot of spare time, but she wasn't excited about it. You're just confused, Samantha's friend Hilary reassured her. You can't rebuild many years of life in a month. Don't rush yourself. Everything will fall into place. Hilary had been living alone for several years. Her son had gone to the capital for his studies and stayed there. After a disastrous marriage, Hilary had no desire to remarry. Her ex-husband was a domineering man and barely managed to escape from him. He threatened to take their son in the event of a divorce, using his influence and connections, among other threats. But fortunately, he ended up in jail due to some shady dealings, as Hilary explained. Taking advantage of the situation, Hilary quickly divorced him and moved to another city. Her son joined the same class where Gayle was studying, and that's how the two young mothers met at a parent-teacher meeting. Hilary cherished her freedom and knew how to use it. She might not have been traditionally beautiful, but she was charming, friendly, and positive. She attracted men and wasn't afraid to engage in relationships, but she would promptly end them if she felt they were trying to control her. You're so wary. Maybe you can imagine it sometimes, Samantha speculated, listening to the reason for another breakup. No, Samantha, I try to judge people with an open mind. But consider this. He prefers a woman in dresses, heels, while I'm always in jeans and sneakers. I'm not feminine enough for him. But Samantha, you know, I really despise heels. I prefer comfortable shoes, not this 20th century attire. I run. I don't glide like a swan. I wasn't lying to him, pretending to be someone else. When I met him, I was wearing sneakers. Why should a man try to change me when he could find a woman who naturally fits his preferences? Hilary, he needs you, but he just has different taste in clothes. You're missing the point. It's not about my appearance. It's about control. I've had enough of these Pygmalion types. It always starts this way. It started this way with my husband, too. Arguing with Hilary was futile, and back then Samantha had no desire to do so. Samantha was much less experienced in relationships. She had only been with Mark, who she married young, and there were no other men in her life. However, Samantha never regretted this. Even now she believed her lack of experience had saved her from many disappointments. It amazed her how Hilary wasn't afraid to start over each time. Samantha herself wouldn't pursue another relationship now. Samantha met Mark at a typical disco in their local club. On that night, she had gone out for the first time, encouraged by her friends and her mother. Why stay at home? No one will come knocking on your door, her mother had said, worried because Samantha was in her 20s and hadn't met anyone yet. In the mother's opinion, her daughter, though not strikingly beautiful, was pretty, with a slim waist, thick, slightly curly brown hair and soft honey-colour eyes. However, Samantha was slightly self-conscious about her appearance, which she thought was too ordinary. "You're too hard on yourself. You shouldn't be," her mother reassured her. At the party, a skinny, handsome brunette, dressed stylishly and sober unlike many others at the disco, approached Samantha and said, quite politely, "Hi, my name is Mark. I haven't seen you here before." "Samantha, I don't usually come to places like this. I'm here with the girls just for company." "How do you find it?" "Too many drunks. I don't like it. I don't think I'll be coming back here." "Yeah, me neither. Listen, Samantha, would you like to go to a cosy cafe and talk? I'd like to invite you." "Let's go," Samantha said, sounding confused. She was eager to leave, and Mark seemed sincere and kind. Plus, she'd never been invited out except by her girlfriends. By the end of the evening, Samantha had learned a bit about Mark. He's a young professional in railway production with some kind of engineering speciality. "Not everyone needs to chase the market. Some of us need to do serious, complex and sometimes boring work to prevent civilization from stagnating." Mark had high aspirations, and he was confident he would succeed. He owned an apartment, inherited from his grandfather, but dreamed of building his own house. He was the only son in his family and preferred hard rock music over the pop music played in discos. Later that night he walked Samantha home, and his respectful demeanour earned him the girl's mother's approval. She appreciated that he was polite and not like the modern guys. The day after, Samantha's friend Annie paid her an unexpected visit. "I was stunned when you ran away from the disco yesterday with Mark Rosenfeld. You should know he has something about him. He left with you just to anger his girlfriend Monica. She's my neighbour, the one many men are chasing." Monica kept Mark in a friend zone for nearly 2 years. I don't know why she needed him, probably just to increase her collection. Well, he is handsome, don't you think? He was serious and didn't realise he was just one of many. When she got bored with him, she stopped hiding her other suitors from him. Now, Mark is following her around, watching her. Probably to annoy her, to make her feel uncomfortable. But he's hoping in vain. It's nearly impossible to embarrass Monica. She's only amused by it all. I thought you might be interested, because what if you're hoping for something with him? Samantha didn't anticipate anything special, but something made her sad. Whatever Annie said, Mark was a good guy. He was kind and considerate, entertaining her all evening, treating her to ice cream and expensive cakes and coffee. Since Monica had not seen his advances to Samantha, he could have done without them. Nevertheless, he arranged a pleasant evening for her. Samantha couldn't shake off her sadness for 2 full days. On the 3rd evening, the doorbell rang. Her mother, expecting her friend, opened the door to find Mark standing there with a small bouquet and a cake. From that evening, they began to go out together from time to time. Samantha quickly fell in love with him, angry at herself for this, and tried not to think about why he really needs her. Her mother tried to comfort her, saying, "Oh, Samantha, don't pay attention to all the gossip. There are plenty of envious girls, but sincere friends are few. You can't help who you fall for. No one is forcing him to see you, but he visits you almost every day. It means he likes you. He compared you to his ex-girlfriend and realized you're better." Samantha listened to her mother in silence, objected to her only to herself, so as not to upset. She and Mark were still just friends. It lasted until Mark's birthday. Amidst the warm and windless July days, they celebrated the holiday at his family's country house. There were only Mark's parents and a friend from his university with his wife there. They had just returned from their honeymoon to the sea. For Samantha, this was the day she met Mark's parents. Her mother took it as a sign of the seriousness of Mark's intentions. As for Samantha, she didn't believe the relationship would last. She thought Mark would disappear as swiftly as he had appeared. If he didn't return to Monica, he'd find another woman. He was too handsome and promising for Samantha, and he must have known that. Her friends hinted at this, and Samantha herself thought the same, but deep down she still wanted to believe that her mother was right. That evening was the happiest she'd ever had. Both her father and mother and Mark's friend, Peter, liked her, and as the day turned into evening, her confidence grew that this day was special. Mark's parents went into town for the night. Peter and his wife Megan quickly secluded themselves in the prepared mansard, leaving Mark and Samantha alone by the outdoor fireplace. Mark seemed delighted with their solitude. He took out a bottle of expensive champagne, a birthday gift from his boss, and proposed they enjoy it alone. "Let's savour this luxurious treat," he suggested. Raising her glass, filled with effervescent bubbles, Samantha proposed a simple toast. "I'm so happy that it's you I love, Mark." "You are the best, the absolute best," he responded, and they spent their first night together. In the morning, after accompanying their friends, Mark drove Samantha home, but then returned in 5 minutes with a bouquet of burgundy roses. "Well, Samantha," slyly asked her mother, having ensured that her daughter's boyfriend had left, "you look happy. Did he propose?" "No, Mum, he didn't. But really, everything was wonderful." "Oh, I'm sure he will. I can see that," the mother promised confidently. 2 days later, the entire Rosenfeld family appeared on the doorstep of Samantha's home. Mark's father, while arranging delicacies on the table, announced that they were traditional people. So they decided to propose to Samantha in a domestic setting. However, the wedding would be in a restaurant, according to all the traditions. Back then, many girls still dreamed of a grand, large and formal wedding, but Samantha was not among them. She desired the kind of wedding her daughter Gayle would have a quarter-century later, simple, elegant, and only for the closest people. She also wanted a honeymoon trip that would be remembered for a lifetime. However, no one sought her opinion about her own wedding, and she didn't even notice it then. She was sitting at the table, discussing something with her mother and future mother-in-law, hardly able to believe that all this was happening to her. Her beloved Mark wanted her as his wife, and she was determined to ensure he'd never regret it. And so, a quarter of a century later, Mark and Samantha completed their married life. The man was again experiencing a long-lost feeling of happiness, and he was relieved that his divorce from his indifferent, aging wife was proceeding smoothly, much easier than he had anticipated. Samantha had let him go without any arguments, threats, or tears. Had she also stayed with him out of inertia for too long? This thought alleviated some of his guilt, but also pierced his ego. He had believed he was the centre of Samantha's world, yet she seemed to let him go without a second thought. Samantha kept her promise made on the day Mark left. She had no claims, as long as Gayle's interests were respected. She looked at Mark without blame, like a fellow commuter on a crowded subway, as if he would soon make room. After they were declared divorced, she casually said, "Bye," and left. She didn't look like someone who was lost and unhappy, and Mark had the strange feeling that he didn't really know his ex-wife. I wonder how long she has been practicing this independent look. His friends called him a fool when they found out about his sudden life change. Some were blunt, others diplomatic, but the message remained the same. Mark didn't take offence because he felt he was right. They're simply envious. A single look at Alexa's photo is enough to spark the envy in every one of them. Or they just never experienced such a feeling, so they can't understand me, Mark convinced himself. He had been like that himself, thinking it was normal to come home to a familiar wife and age together unnoticed. They were all just living in a state of hibernation, but he had suddenly woken up. Mark, heeding his father's advice, never regretted marrying Samantha. He initially courted her to make Monica jealous. However, His value did not rise in the girl's eyes. Surprisingly, he wasn't upset and was grateful to Samantha for freeing him from the obsession that had consumed him for the past 2 years. In Samantha's company, Mark felt comfortable and confident, and the girl didn't demand anything from him. She merely enjoyed his company. His parents noticed the change in Mark. It was impossible not to. He stopped being irritable, no longer disappeared at night, established a routine, and reignited his interest in work and career. They had worried for 2 years about their son's infatuation with a girl who, in their opinion, only wanted to sell herself more expensive. Now they quietly celebrated the change, careful not to jinx unclear prospects by asking too many questions. Of course, Mark's mother made some inquiries. Their town wasn't so large that they couldn't find mutual acquaintances. "Do you remember my classmate who knits for people?" Mrs. Rosenfeld excitedly shared with her husband as he came home from work. "Her cousin is a dispatcher at the same depot where the girl our Mark is dating works in the personnel department. She says that Samantha is really nice and serious, and generally without any trouble." "We'll see," Dad responded, chuckling. "It's not our decision to make anyway." Mark usually avoided discussing his personal life with his father due to their differences, and because his father had never approved of his previous choices. However, after he introduced Samantha to his family on his birthday, his father said, "We need to talk, Sonny. Samantha is a decent girl, not worse than your ex. Your mother and I noticed the way she looks at you. If you marry her, you'll always feel welcome and be cared. Over time, you'll come to appreciate this. If I were you, I'd marry her right away. You won't regret it. You'll remember my words with gratitude when I'm gone. And trust me, other girls won't run away. You'll have enough for your lifetime, if you wish." And so Mark got married. His parents have passed away. If they were still alive, he might not have been able to face the turbulent changes in his life, because he would have had to keep his divorce from Samantha a secret forever. His parents, who loved Samantha as their own daughter, would never have accepted it. Sometimes he missed his parents, but he was relieved that his beloved Alexa wouldn't have to deal with the undeserved disapproval of his relatives. His only relative left was Gayle, who didn't want to meet Alexa. "Alexa is just a few years older than you. You might have something in common," he suggested. "Dad, if I had to live with your girlfriend, I would find something in common with her to avoid negativity. But I don't see the need. I'm sorry. We might never meet in our lives. I think your girlfriend would be okay with that too. I've already agreed to Mum's request not to hurt your feelings or say mean things to you, which is challenging enough for me now. So please don't make my life more difficult." Mark understood. Gayle had always been closer to her mother than him, but Alexa was upset about Gayle's refusal to meet her. "I'm not even offended for myself, but for you. Your daughter doesn't seem to make even the slightest effort to understand her father's feelings. You have done and continue to do everything for her. It's so easy for her to accept an apartment share as a gift, yet doing something nice for her father seems like an insurmountable task." She looked genuinely upset, and Mark had to comfort her for quite a while. In the first 2 months of her newfound freedom, Samantha worked hard to change her old way of life, initially adopting the simplest methods. "Guys, how about I come over every weekend to spend the entire day with Naomi, studying and playing, while you two get some alone time?" she suggested. Gayle and her husband declined the offer, intending to raise their daughter themselves. "Please don't take offence, Mum. We'd rather go out together sometimes." The cultural programme crafted for her by Gayle and Hilary was intriguing, yet it somehow failed to impress Samantha. She felt out of place when her daughter or friend took her to the theatre or an art exhibit. Their attempts to entertain her fell flat, but Samantha tried to show genuine joy. "Listen, it feels like you're forcing yourself," Hilary remarked sharply. "You don't need to pretend for our sake. consider what you truly want for yourself." "I just want to lounge with a book undisturbed," Samantha confessed. Eventually, her friend and daughter persuaded Samantha to take a vacation. Among Lena's numerous acquaintances, there was a travel agent with very favourable offers. In April, Samantha flew to Egypt for 10 days. Being away from home was like being on another planet, which made her extremely happy. She realised she hadn't been to the sea for 10 years. She used to go every year with Gayle. However, when Mark started building a house, it consumed nearly all of their finances. Since then, Gayle went to the sea alone, attending children's and youth camps. In Egypt, Samantha preferred to rest alone, avoiding noisy groups, and was content with her solitude. She returned home completely rejuvenated, readily shifting from relaxation to her routine. And then she realized she had almost forgotten about Tom's parents' 30-year wedding anniversary, happening the day after her return. Fortunately, her daughter, who greeted her upon her return, had it sorted out, and even had purchased the presents on their behalf. The wedding anniversary was decided to celebrate at the Lost in the Wood manor house, which hardly came as a surprise to the invitees. Tom's parents, who were not fans of ostentatious restaurants and preferred nature, loved fishing, trekking, and beautiful walks. Samantha breathed a sigh of relief upon learning that the event didn't require a meticulous selection of dress, heels, or elaborate hair and makeup. And instead of an extended preparation on the day of the anniversary, Samantha enjoyed a good night's sleep, a leisurely cup of coffee, and dressed comfortably in loose beige pants and a snow white. She chose to let her hair hang loose around her shoulders. "Well, whoever says women over 40 shouldn't have long hair can keep their opinion to themselves," she thought. She had forgotten how well her honey brown eyes complemented her tan. Samantha liked the reflection in the mirror. She couldn't precisely recall when this self-appreciation began, perhaps during a vacation, when she felt a heavy burden lift from her chest and found joy in simply living. A little more time passed, and for Mark, things became not so cheerful. It seemed that only recently he and Alexa had celebrated New Year, and it was already August. It was necessary to think about a vacation, to plan something interesting. But there was neither strength nor ideas. Mark was so exhausted from the last year, as he had never been exhausted since his senior year, when he combined work with business trips and his studies. But then he was just a young man, and such a regimen was easier for him. The worst part was that Alexa said once that he had transformed from a lively man to a dull and tedious person despite his efforts. The mention of efforts caught Mark's attention, as he felt he was the one and only putting in the efforts. He didn't mind Alexa's lifestyle, but he wished she'd understand that he couldn't always keep up with the eternal feast. "I'm not a showman, I'm a chief engineer of the project, honey," he used to joke. "Well, Alexa isn't to blame," Mark confided in his old friend Peter over a glass of whiskey. "She's sensitive, young, and desired a lively life filled with new experiences. She is relying on me to provide that. You know, I'm struggling to figure out where to take Alexa for the next New Year. We visited the Emirates in March, and we're going to visit Hawaii in September, and I can't afford 3 trips in a year. Plus, I have some house issues." "You've become overly anxious, Mark. Love can be exhausting, and that's your case. You're as busy as a housewife with 3 kids, Peter remarked, slightly tipsy from the whiskey. "Thanks for the support and advice, buddy," Mark responded, stung by the comparison. "You're welcome. If not an old friend, who else will tell you the truth? Now, let's get back to the specifics. How do you want to celebrate New Year?" "I would have stayed home," Mark grinned. "We would have invited you and Megan. We used to celebrate every year like that. What was wrong with that?" "We've already been invited, so I'm sorry. Listen, why don't you and your partner stay home together? You two shouldn't be tired of each other yet. Romantic music, candles, pillows, huh? We spent New Year's Eve at home last year because we didn't have an opportunity to book anything decent. With this divorce, you know it's been a mess. Alexa might get offended if we spend another New Year's Eve at home. Well, I've never had such a problem, to be honest. Peter waved his hands. I don't even know what to advise you. Listen, what if your Alexa goes back to work? She would definitely be less bored and appreciate simple recreation more. Oh, don't give me that look. I'm not suggesting she should be hauling weights, sitting behind the cash register at the supermarket, or monitoring a conveyor belt. Doesn't she have some kind of elegant profession? Didn't she have a life before you? She's not a schoolgirl, after all. She worked in a flower shop, I told you. There. You might buy her a course for New Year's Eve to be a top-notch creative florist. It could land her a job in a cool place. I'm absolutely serious. This gift shows you genuinely care. Am I wrong? I'll think about it, Mark replied wearily. Over the years, finding common ground with his old friend had become increasingly difficult. They had less in common now than in their youth, but Mark wasn't prepared to completely cut ties with him. After meeting Peter, Mark had planned to visit his sick colleague, pick up some paperwork and discuss certain matters. However, he decided to postpone the visit. He wanted to go home, so he rescheduled the meeting for the next morning. On his way, he stopped at Alexa's favourite bakery in the wine shop. Driving home, he realised he had forgotten to inform Alexa that he wouldn't be home 2 hours early. Well, it would be a surprise. The light was on in the living room, but the soft, melodic voice echoed from the terrace. Alexa had a peculiar habit of chatting with her girlfriends in the evenings, sitting on the open terrace and staring the distant line of streetlights along the highway. This was understandable in the summer, but seemed less comfortable in the winter. Nonetheless, Alexa assured Mark she was fine. She would just put on her coat, slip her feet into her boots, and step out for a chat. I don't want my serious beloved man to overhear my silly chatting with my friends, she used to say with a shrug. A few times Mark had overheard her because he was curious. He found out that these conversations were filled with trivial girl talk, sharing manicurist recommendations, discussing swimming pools, boasting about gifts. In these conversations, Alexa seemed content with her life, which pleased Mark. From then on, he didn't eavesdrop any more. Now, she was conversing against a backdrop of light, rhythmic music, oblivious to Mark's arrival. The man followed her voice, which resembled the sound of a bubbling brook, along the wall towards the terrace, picking up on individual words as he got closer. I think about him very often, right down to the most delightful details. What would happen if I decide? I fully understand that he can't give me anything but that. Yes, that's it. That's what I mean. Suni, I really don't want to be a foolish person who spoils everything for a fleeting thrill. Yes, you're absolutely right. That's why I haven't decided to meet him alone yet. And I probably never will. And I can't take that risk. You're right. I can't pretend that, well, I'll mess up somewhere. Mark may be a little old for me, but he's dependable. Yes, he has proposed to me. I agree. Such opportunities shouldn't be thrown away. You realise that when you hit 30. He'll definitely do everything for me, unlike those who insist on splitting a restaurant bill. Thanks for listening. Goodbye, Suni. Kiss you. The door snapped like a coffin board, and Alexa's light footsteps fell silent in the house. Mark stood, his forehead resting against the cold wall of his house, contemplating. When did it get so cold? It wasn't long ago that it was warm here. He was thankful for Alexa's chatting nature, otherwise he might have married her and signed over his house without a second thought. Gayle would inherit the apartment, and her Tom was from a prosperous family. On the other hand, Alexa only had him, and she had subtly persuaded him to this point, making him believe it was his independent decision. He realized that he was the fool, having fallen into the age-old trap like many before him. Mark could not dare to go into his own house and throw his fiancée out like a stray cat. After all, he had been happy with her for a while, even if there was self-deception. Finally, Mark decided he would give her the money he had saved for a vacation in Hawaii. It was just enough for her to get by until she found a job. She could move back with her mother or find a thrilling new relationship. Finally, Mark took his courage and walked resolutely into the house, and then there was a great scandal. Left alone, Mark reached for the bottle of expensive sparkling wine he had bought at the wine shop. "Well," he muttered, "let's celebrate." He never believed in the law of the boomerang, thinking it was a consolation for losers. He thought that everyone gets what they can take for themselves, dismissing the rest as mystical. But now this mysticism had a place in his real life. What had Samantha felt listening to his phone conversation? Just 6 months had passed, and the boomerang had struck him. It was swift and unexpected. Fate had been kind. He hadn't had time to marry and invest heavily in Alexa's well-being. Samantha had been with him for a quarter of a century, always alleviating his weariness when he returned home. He had everything that constituted warm well-being, a state many only dream of. His father was right. He had never regretted his sensible, convenient choice. Now, without a father or mother or friends, there was only one place left on earth where he could go. He accepted he would do anything to stay. But not now, not in such a miserable state. He needed time to think things over, to sleep, to work, and to find the right words. A week had passed, and here Mark was standing in front of his ex-wife's house. He had left the keys to their apartment in the mailbox on the day he moved out, so he had to wait for Samantha to come home. Mark found a parking spot around the corner from a nearby office centre, left his car there and went for a walk. Samantha's probably helping Gayle take care of Naomi right now, because Gayle may have gone back to work. That would be very much like her. I haven't heard anything from her since the January. She hasn't called me, only wishing me a happy birthday via text message. Well, I'll make up for all this, go fishing with my son-in-law and help with Naomi. Gayle doesn't know how to be angry for long and play Snow Queen. She's very much like her mother. Mark realized he was on his 3rd cup of espresso. It was time to leave because Samantha must be home by now. For sure, lights were on in the kitchen and living room windows. Hesitant, Mark stood in front of the intercom, but after a couple of minutes the door opened. A thin, elderly lady with a small dog on a brightly coloured harness came out. Ignoring the woman's condescendingly mocking look, Mark entered the building. In a minute he found himself on the familiar 3rd floor, in front of the light grey door, and pressed the bell. Samantha opened the door almost immediately. Mark got the impression that she initially wanted to slam the door shut because he could enter, but then she seemed to change her mind. Mark hesitated to step over this until Samantha nonchalantly invited him in, asking, "Come in? What's wrong?" His ex-wife looked different, yet familiar. She had always been of average height and build, neither heavy nor light, but now she seemed airy and casual, embodying the grace of a young girl. The woman had applied a dark chocolate shade of makeup, which complemented her unusually warm eye colour and skin tone. Her hair was not in its typical sleek ponytail, but was loosely scattered over her shoulders, reminiscent of the models in Renaissance paintings. She wore a simple flowing burgundy knee-length dress with a daring neckline that accentuated her slender waist. It seemed that Samantha appeared 10 years younger. "You've become stunning," Mark said in amazement. "Yeah, thanks," Samantha replied without pretense, her honey-brown eyes smiling politely, as if she had heard that every day of her life. She paused briefly, expecting him to say more, but he remained silent. Then gently and without irritation, she continued, "Listen, Mark, If you have important business with me, say it now. I'm expecting guests. You didn't call ahead, and I have my own plans. I can't spare much time right now, I'm sorry." "Could you forgive me?" he asked in a breath. "I forgave you a long time ago," Samantha answered with a peaceful smile. "Mark, did you join some secret society for your career that requires notarized forgiveness from ex-wives? You should call Gayle more often. She may not admit it, but she misses you. Now, why are you here?" "I want our family back. I want to make things right. I was an idiot. I made the worst mistake, and I'll admit it. I understand that you need time. Think it over and let me know when I can visit." "I'm sorry things didn't work out for you and your young girlfriend. You were so enthusiastic. I didn't have the heart to call you a sneak or anything like that, and it doesn't make any more sense now. I have a man I love." "Look, we're adults," Mark began again. "You had every right to retaliate after my foolish prank. You certainly proved me wrong. Can we agree not to revisit these past misadventures?" "Mark, you've misunderstood me," Samantha replied. "Or rather, you didn't listen. I wasn't trying to prove anything or seek revenge. After all these years, you should know I wouldn't stoop to such pettiness. It's not a fling. I'm getting married." And that's how it happened. At the wedding anniversary, Samantha arrived early with her daughter, son-in-law and granddaughter. Tom always left early for lengthy trips, half-jokingly claiming that his girls would inevitably forget something, need to return, make multiple stops and take photos at scenic spots. More or less, that's how it unfolded, but it never hindered the family from arriving before the appointed time. Rachel and Adam, the perpetrators of the celebration, were discussing catering with the campground owner. Gayle and Tom immediately went to inspect the meat for the barbecue. Meanwhile, Samantha and Naomi headed off to explore the lake. The little girl was running around her grandmother, who, after her leisurely vacation, was a little unused to the fast pace of life and let her guard down. The woman did not expect that there would be a rubber boat hidden in the gap between the reeds, nor did she expect Naomi to leap into it. The boat began to rock. Samantha froze in shock and was about to rush to rescue her granddaughter as a silent fisherman in fishing boots materialized from somewhere and gently pulled Naomi out of the boat. The girl was not frightened and not upset, only giggled and showed him her tongue. "Hello, please take her," said the man, handing Naomi over to Samantha. "Thank you," responded Samantha, coming out of her daze, and they shared a brief laugh. The fisherman had a tidy short beard, hair trimmed with silver, and cheerful grey eyes. "Excuse me," Samantha said to him, adding, "We're here for a wedding anniversary. We arrived early, so we are having adventures while waiting for the others."
"Everyone here is like that," the fisherman replied, "including me.
"I'm James, a classmate of Adam." "I'm Samantha, the mother of their daughter-in-law. And this curious girl is Naomi, their granddaughter." Samantha introduced them both. From that moment on, she and James were together. They sat together, chatted about everything in the world, and only danced with each other on the creaky wooden terrace. Everyone took it for granted, as if they had been a couple for a long time, which seemed both strange and delightful. They were comfortable with each other, not afraid to say or do something wrong that might ruin everything. In the evening, Rachel helped Samantha put their restless granddaughter to bed, who finally settled down. Covering the little girl with a blanket, Rachel spoke softly to Samantha. "James is a very good man. We used to interact daily in our university time, but then life took us to different cities. He's been living in another state for many years, yet we visit each other annually. His wife passed away 7 years ago, heart disease. I expect that's why they didn't have children. They didn't want to take the risk. James is alone, truly alone. Casual relationships aren't his style. He needs someone to care for him.
He's self-sufficient, but his solitude doesn't make him happy. Adam and I decided to make a show of our wedding anniversary for a reason. We had a hunch something good would come out of it. You know, if someone had told me yesterday that I could be in this situation, I would have laughed incredulously. Samantha responded quietly. Naomi fell into a deep sleep, and both women returned to their guests. The wedding celebration carried on the next day. People divided into groups based on interests and scattered under the beech canopies, near the fireplace, or in the arbours at the forest's edge. James was rowing Samantha around the lake in a boat. Wrapped in a woolen blanket, she enjoyed the bright spring day. When the celebration was over, everyone went to their homes. James called daily and visited Samantha twice a month. The woman also visited him several times. During her last visit in early September, James tenderly slipped a beautiful ring onto Samantha's finger. If you agree to marry me, consider this an engagement ring. If not, it's just a heartfelt gift, he declared. On her return, Samantha shared the news with her daughter. Despite her excitement, she tried to maintain a composed demeanour, considering all factors. I've worked at this agency for so many years, Gayle, and I know how difficult it is for women my age to find work in my field in another place. To employers, we're practically retirees. Not everyone sees the value we offer. Mum, there are other recruitment agencies, and by the way, you've considered changing jobs multiple times. This could be your opportunity, Gayle countered. And you and Naomi. Samantha hesitantly put forth another argument that must have seemed significant. You're used to me always being available if you need anything. That's not a valid argument. I don't mean that your help isn't necessary. However, you know perfectly well that you're not so helpless as to make my young, beautiful mother a full-time grandmother. If we need to, we have Tom's parents here, but we don't have any in other very interesting cities, which is a pity. So a happy grandmother in another state means a personal tour guide on vacation. There's so much for Naomi to see when she gets a bit older. Mum, I'm joking, of course, but you should see yourself flying around completely enthralled. Don't pretend there's anything you care about more than your current love. It's completely normal, and we're all happy for you. After that conversation, Samantha wrote a resignation letter. That day after work, she awaited Hilary's visit, who had promised to bring a wedding hairstylist she knew. Despite her usual aversion to glamour, Lena had insisted. You can go to your wedding even in a jumpsuit, but it would be a crime not to make a stylish hairdo out of your beautiful hair." Samantha laughed and agreed, looking forward to surprising James. However, that evening took an unexpected turn when her ex-husband showed up. "Samantha, I understand that you tried to escape your loneliness, but look, this incident turned out to be beneficial for both of us. You've blossomed, and I've learned to appreciate what I have instead of chasing illusions. We both know it's not wise to seek adventure at our age. We share so much in common. It won't be hard for us to start over. The house is finished. You'll love it. We could live there and rent this apartment out. Imagine, no more cramped space, and the woods are just a stone's throw away. We could go flower picking, which you love. In summer we can vacation by the sea, taking our granddaughter. Or it could just be the two of us, to rekindle our feelings." "Everything has fallen apart, Mark. There's nothing to rebuild," Samantha said, without a trace of gloating or irritation. "I'm grateful for the good times we had, for our wonderful daughter, even for this incident, as you call it. Before this I didn't truly know myself. What could I be? What kind of person could be with me? What happiness feels like? I could have lived my whole life without knowing. You must understand me, because you said something similar a year ago." "I was wrong, Samantha. Aren't you afraid of being wrong, like me?" "I'm not afraid," Samantha replied with a quiet smile. Mark's eyes sparkled with cold anger, and the woman decided it was time for him to leave. She didn't want to trade insults. They had no place in her life now. But suddenly the doorbell rang and Hilary entered, accompanied by a tall, thin girl wearing a hat with a large pom-pom. "Here we are," Hilary said from the doorway. "This is Chloe, our wedding fairy, and this is Samantha, our bride. Oh, and this is Samantha's ex-husband. He must have come to wish his ex-wife happiness in her new marriage. Very modern. Hello, Mark." After shooting Hilary a look full of anything but goodwill, Mark grabbed his jacket from the hanger and left without looking back. He didn't remember how he ended up on the street, how he was driving home. However, not far from home, he was stopped for speeding. "We exceed the speed limit," the traffic officer stated, the fact tiredly. "I don't care about your fines," Mark replied indifferently. "My ex-wife left me. I was on my way back to her. I thought she would be happy, forgive me, but she's getting married. That's a woman's fidelity. She was a decent woman, who had a house, a job, a granddaughter in her head. What to speak of others?" Mark had a desperate sudden urge to speak out to someone he didn't know. Getting home, Mark immediately called Gayle, apologised for not calling for a long time, asked about Naomi, and when he could see them all. "Maybe we can go out together somewhere, like a water park or something Naomi likes." "Dad, did something happen to you?" Gayle asked immediately. "Yes, daughter, and I need an ally in your face. There's just no one else to talk your mum out of doing a stupid thing." "Not so long ago, you were such a romantic, putting your passion above everything else," sneered the daughter, with a tiny hint of gloating. "Samantha's a smart woman, and smart people learn from other people's mistakes. Don't you want Mum and Dad to be together again, Gayle?" Mark continued to persuade his daughter. "Daddy," Gayle replied gently, "let's be honest. I've outgrown the potential teenage trauma of parents divorcing. Your marriage has run its course. I'm really sorry you ended up with a woman like Alexa, but you're still a pretty good catch. However, if Mum agreed to return to you now, that would be a mistake. That's why I'd try to dissuade her. You were with her because it was convenient. She deserves to be loved. Now, she has that love. And I wish the same for you." "I see. Now that you have a share in the apartment, you have no more need for a father, right? You ungrateful brat." The man hung up abruptly and turned off his phone. He didn't want to get up in the next morning, and moreover he couldn't. The hangover felt heavier after solitary drinking than after the same amount of alcohol consumed in a jovial gathering. Luckily, after a stimulating shower, Mark began to feel more alert. He switched on his mobile phone. Accustomed to holding positions of responsibility, he always felt the need to stay connected. Without communication, he felt detached from the world, fearing of missing something important. He spotted 13 unanswered calls, all from Alexa. Evidently, he hadn't been very persuasive when he asked her to leave his life. He simply couldn't be harsh with her. She possessed a unique ability to look at a man in a way that made him want to pamper her. And she could exploit this skill, as long as there were fools like him around. Mark's thoughts were interrupted by a call. There she is again. Okay, I'm not going to run away like a boy, the man thought. Mark, don't just hang up, pleaded a melodious, angelic voice, which would have softened even a stone. Just listen to me. It could be important for you too. Alexa, it's unlikely you'll come up with something new to convince me. Trust has been lost. Let's not waste time. But I am pregnant. Alexa sobbed into the phone desperately. And I haven't been with anyone else. No one but you. Sure, I've had fantasies, but I've never acted on them. Who hasn't? I would never cheat on you. I didn't know about the baby when you kicked me out. Yesterday, I took a test and found out. You can take a DNA test to confirm it's your baby. Hold on a minute. Mark managed to interrupt. Do you want to keep the baby? Yes, I do. It's time for me, and I really want to. So you're calling to get financial support for the baby? No, I need his father. He needs his father, Alexa cried. Alexa, quit the theatrics. I'm not pretending. I genuinely want things to improve between us. I promise I won't lie to you again. And with a baby, I won't have time to be silly. Alexa was raised single-handedly by her mother, who showered her with affection and dressed her like a doll. Her mother was a skilled seamstress, working flexible hours and taking orders at home. From the age of 3, Alexa was enrolled in dance classes and various extracurricular activities. Other than dancing and singing, Alexa showed little interest in anything else. Her academic performance was average, but her charm and ability to lift the spirits of even the sternest teachers often earned her higher grades. Alexa grew into a beautiful, artistic girl with a graceful figure. With her looks, she could have become an actress, but she lacked the determination required. She was only interested in what came easily to her, and the idea of exerting effort towards a goal often led to bouts of ennui. If it's so hard, it's not worth it, she used to think. Alexa's mother worried that her daughter would repeat her own fate by falling into a fleeting romance and ending up alone with a child. She urged her sincerely and patiently, saying, Alexa, neither of us have money or connections, nor any special talents or ambitions. But you're beautiful, sweet and easygoing. Everyone likes you. That's a valuable asset. You only need to make one wise decision in choosing a husband who will care for you, so you don't end up toiling endlessly like I do. There's nothing glamorous about such a life. Understanding algebra and chemistry was challenging for Alexa, but she grasped her mother's advice instantly. She politely, sweetly and sympathetically turned down any suitor who couldn't provide a secure life. Occasionally she felt upset and even spent a month or 2 wallowing. She liked some of the boys quite a lot, but her mother's life and those of many women around her served as a stark reminder. Love doesn't last forever, and what follows is a struggle with life's hardships, either alone or with a partner. She didn't dream of winning over a wealthy man, and didn't believe in such fairy tales. Being a practical person, she would be content with a well-to-do man, who stood firm on his own 2 feet, someone she could completely trust. She avoided casual flings to protect her reputation. The city might seem vast, but is it really? By the age of 30, she had only 2 relationships, both more or less aligning with her plans, but in both cases the presence of wives and underage children derailed her plans. Despite these setbacks, Alexa remained undeterred. After meeting Mark Rosenfeld, she knew he was the one. He had visited her floral shop for an original bouquet for his boss's wife, whose birthday party he was going to attend. This isn't a corporate event, but a personal celebration, he explained to Alexa, helping her to understand what type of bouquet he needed. Alexa liked the visitor. She had her principles and refused even promising matches if the man didn't seem pleasant. Now she smiled and moved so that he would definitely come again. She considered herself fortunate. Mark's daughter was already married, and his wife was of a type that Alexa didn't find threatening. It is only necessary to behave correctly to finally grow up and not fall for young fitness instructors and other seekers of entertainment. She also thought having a child wouldn't be a bad idea. She really liked kids. A month after Alexa's call, Mark was sitting with his friend at a bar. "What can I tell you?" Peter mused. "This situation isn't the worst for you. The feeling of not being needed by anyone is probably much worse. Your parents are gone, your ex-wife and daughter are happy without you, and now you're becoming a father again. Late fatherhood is often the most fulfilling. What if you have a son? You've always envied me for having 2 boys. You'll take care of him, become the favourite, authoritative daddy, the big boss. I'm not saying you should live with his mother, but that's up to you. But I can't believe that all your love for her evaporated at once." Leaving the bar, Peter took a cab home, while Mark chose to walk to clear his head from the brandy haze. The bar was in the city centre, near train station square. Mark felt drawn to walk through the bustling crowd. A train seemed to have recently arrived, the people carrying luggage entering the square, eagerly chatting with their welcoming parties. Suddenly, Mark spotted Samantha. She was wearing a stylish crimson jacket and looking youthful. A tall, bearded man gently held her by the shoulders. Mark paused underneath a lantern, and they noticed him. "Hi, Mark," said Samantha with a casual air. "Hi, Samantha. My congratulations upon your upcoming wedding. And I'm about to become a father." "Wow, that's great." Samantha's companion smiled broadly and genuinely. "Then we extend our congratulations to you too." "Thanks. Well, I'll return to my family now." Mark waved and disappeared into the crowd. "Who was that slightly inebriated and melancholic gentleman?" James humorously raised an eyebrow. "My ex-husband," Samantha replied. "If he's telling the truth, I'm happy for him." "Well then, I'm glad for him too. I owe him for being so stupid and leaving you alone." After watching them get into the cab, chattering and laughing, Mark went up to another cab and said Alexa's address.